A leader in event education, the Event Leadership Institute offers on-demand video classes, interviews with industry mavericks, and online instructor-led professional development courses taught by industry experts. Visit eventleadershipinstitute.com for more information and to see a schedule of upcoming classes.
Are you a follower?
Okay, so we're gonna call the
Welcome to GatherGeeks, a podcast by BizBash, the place where people passionate about meetings and events come together. Here are your hosts, BizBash CEO David Adler and Executive Editor Beth Kormanik.
Welcome to GatherGeeks. Hi, David.
Hey, Beth. How are you doing today?
Terrific. You know, David, I know this is an episode near and dear to your heart because today we're sharing a conversation with your BizBash co-founder, Richard Aaron.
Yep, this is going to be one from the heart.
Yeah, Richard is BizBash's president, and we honored him earlier this year when we inducted him into the BizBash Hall of Fame. For many people, he has been the face of BizBash along with you, David. Or Richard at least has been the voice, since he often provided the voice of God at our events.
He's the ham of the couple.
That's right. Well, his contributions to the industry go beyond what he's done for BizBash. He also is a professor at New York University and teaching the next generation of practitioners in the meeting and event industry. And he was among the leaders who led the process of professionalizing the industry, which is something you're going to go into through education at the university level and also continuing education. He shares some of his insights in this chat with you.
Yeah, it's a great interview. The only issue is there's a couple of audio issues, which are my fault. And I just want to point them out in advance when people listen. So don't yell at Richard, yell at me.
Well, but I will point out that our producer, Dave, works so hard on these episodes and
so
put
hopefully,
this in the best possible
hopefully
condition.
We did it.
Yes, you know, Richard's awards and accolades go on. I won't enumerate all of them here, but, you know, suffice it to say, he means a lot to our BizBash family and beyond that to the larger meeting and event industry. So, you know, David, you and Richard have had countless conversations over the years, so now we get a chance to listen in.
So, Richard, here we are, 18 years later, after starting BizBash together. What is it like today compared to what it was like in 2000?
Well, first of all, where the heck did 18 years go?
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, and then the 18 years before that, where I was at Mallory Factor and production companies. It's all amazing to me. But what's happened is the world has evolved and an industry has blossomed. You know, really and truly, that's what we've really seen, the maturing, the defining of an industry that really didn't know what its potential was.
And so when you looked at it you're considered one of the fathers of the event industry in New York City, and which is the capital of events, in my opinion, right?
Yes. Oh, the guru. I usually wear robes, but I left them at home for this interview.
Has it really changed that much? Is it still about people meeting people? Is it really that different?
Well, I think, you know, philosophically, we can look at what an event is and represents, and in certain levels, it has not changed. It's still about interactions, shaping a business outcome, celebration, and all of that. But the knowledge and delivery is light years ahead with, you know, books and educational programs and process defined now. The whole event management process, which is now scientific in a way, and a skill and a craft.
Okay, can you boil it all down to what's in all these books? Like, what did you not know that you know now that you would have learned from a book if you had studied it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot in these books,
okay.
And I teach. You know, I've developed over 4 courses
Professor
at
Aaron,
NYU
yes.
that I've developed the content which is still being utilized from event management, event marketing, you know, events and tourism, event design and production, which I teach. And what's in these books is the process, so that it is scientific, a language, so that your students can go into the world after having studied production and understand what sound is, what lighting is, what design is, as opposed to intuitively discovering it piece by piece.
Is that what happened when you just started in this industry years ago?
Yeah, well, I think it's very intuitive, but that's not knowledge. It's not knowledge of risk management or how to do catering or all the certifications now that define a skill set and a body of knowledge, which some people don't care about and others feel it defines them
Well,
as professionals.
Let's step back a little bit. I mean, you came into this industry from the entertaining world.
Yes, a
So-
master's of fine arts in acting and direction.
But the event organizers that I talked to today that intuitively get it
Mm-hmm.
are mostly coming from the world of production, TV, producing, because a lot of the same elements are there. Tell us your story of how you evolved from being in the entertainment industry to going to events. It's a fascinating. I know the story, so I want you
I'll
to.
cut through it very quickly, but I left Boston, where I grew up, and I got my Master of Fine Arts at Brandeis and came to New York to be a Broadway actor, which I did. I was in several shows, but I studied, too, formally acting and directing. So what do you learn as a student of theater, from being on the stage? You learn skills such as timing, pacing, flow, building the rhythm, which I think makes for a superior event producer. Because, in the vernacular, event planners are one thing, and event producers handle creative and production at a higher level. So there are different strata of skills.
Which people don't really understand.
No, but this is a part of what we teach at university.
Yeah.
What is an event producer? What is the skill sets? And what is an event planner? And they're vastly different. And you don't want an event planner producing your show with Bette Midler when you're paying $1 million, and they don't know how to handle that and pace it and time it and do everything that needs to be done. So,
But doesn't an event planner has to have those skills as well to understand the pacing of just the delivery of certain services too?
I don't know that they're taught that. I mean, I think a lot of them know how to do certain skills such as venues, venue inspections, catering, maybe risk management to some degree, but not what's demanded of us today with bomb threats and terrorism. And this is what's changed. It's so much more refined that you can call yourself an event professional because you did a few events, but your knowledge is not comprehensive. Whereas the people we're preparing today have comprehensive knowledge of what is event risk management, vastly different than when it was 20 years ago. There's so much more that's being looked at, and at fairs and festivals. Look what happened in Manchester, England this week. Nothing could have prevented it, but the knowledge of how things would happen in an emergency probably was defined at meetings by the venue and others. So there's preparedness and things that did not exist. And people that are just intuitively thrown in do not really understand at the highest level. If you're hiring someone to manage your organization, you want them to have that higher level of skill, because it doesn't always happen to someone else. Sometimes there's bad rain that threatens a tent event, and how you're handling that. So there's a million scenarios.
The interesting thing, you talk about the Manchester situation. The people that are managing that event were probably freaking out, but they can't freak out. They have to be calm and figure, what were they doing? What were they thinking at that moment in terms of risk analysis?
Yeah, well, I think that first of all, the venue takes over when there's a problem at the venue. But I know every event we've ever done at BizBash, we sit with the team and discuss what will happen in a bomb threat or a fire or whatever, and we know the process, who's in charge, how it's handled. But obviously when there's chaos, you can't expect it to be orderly, but there still was some subset of definition of process and procedure in that whole milieu of that horrible tragedy, that the event planners in the venue had some sense that they make sure things are shut down, things are cleared out. There is a process that was going on. And I'm sure that if we reached out and found the event professional in the venue there, they would tell you how much process there was in place due to our knowledge of what we know now that we didn't know then.
In our Florida show this year, we had a fire alarm went off. And it was fascinating to see how the venue marched into action like you wouldn't believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was scientific, it was professional, it was completely handled with such professionalism.
Right. Case in point of what your original question was, what's different then than now? 20 years ago, no one had a process. It was not discussed at meetings and tie downs. Now it's processed, it's discussed at every Super Bowl, every Bonnaroo. It is totally looked over because of a litigious society. We have no choice. There's no such thing as a not possible problem at an event, so you have to have scenarios.
But the event producer and the event planner have to have the skill set and the knowledge, even at some level, to work together to understand all these different situations?
Well, hopefully the consummate or the better event managers and event directors are driving the process with the venue and the key stakeholders so that they know what their security team is doing. They should be asking the questions, not because you also want on record in case there's ever a case. It can make a big difference in a court case it's like liquor liability. The guest and the host have responsibilities. The host is responsible to every person at that event philosophically. And if someone's drunk and gets in the car, the host is responsible, whether it's at an event or their home. So yes, there's understanding, and the event planner should know there are dre laws and things that do with how bartenders are trained and how.
What are some of those? What are some of those things that an event organizer or event planner needs to really know about those liability situations? You teach this. You're Professor Aaron.
Well, thank you, C.E.O. Adler. There are specific laws state by state. They're a little different, but they say the caterer is whoever hires the staffing at the bar. They're responsible to bring forward the understanding of what should happen. So if you have guests that are drunk, the bartender has every right to refuse them a drink and go get the host or their client to say, could you come over and handle this guest? I think they're out of control and I don't want to serve them anymore because they're slurring and they're swaying. So yes, the bartenders are trained in DRAM laws, which exist.
So DRAM laws, what does that mean actually?
It's protocol for how to handle over alcoholed people at events. And most caterers could speak to this if you had them in, they would speak to it, or staffing companies. But even their relationship with the host has to decide. I remember in my day doing many Christmas parties for corporations in New York, and I had to get involved, and sometimes people are difficult, so I'd bring the host, the CEO, or the meeting professional to that bar, and we would make sure that person did not get in the car and drive home. We would make arrangements.
And the host is liable
Yes,
for them, actually, if there's an accident?
Totally. Absolutely, positively, yes. Because you're hosting the event, and if they were drinking out of control, there's an inherent understanding that you were not watching the well-being of your guests any more than creating a hazard for them to trip over or some kind of wire across the floor. You're responsible for not having.
Are you responsible? Let's say they're taking drugs. Are you responsible for that as well? Because alcohol is something that you're physically serving.
Well, you're not serving the drugs.
You're not serving the drugs, so you're not responsible to that.
You are controlling the bar.
Things like
who's pouring at the bar.
What about if when people get sick from the food? Is the host responsible?
Totally.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Now, we've had situations of BizBash, which we had one incident in an LA venue, a big venue, where if someone gets sick, they sue the venue, they sue the caterer, they sue the sponsoring organization, they just sue everybody so they can figure out who's going to pay. And so even if there's a suspicion, but there's the science of events now that every caterer keeps a book on every item that's served for every event. And when this happened at a luncheon, when we looked into it, the catering organization had a log of when the food was prepared, how long it stayed out, when it was moved in and out of refrigerators, when it was moved to the ballroom. There was a minute-to-minute log to show it was all in compliance of the LA department laws, and it's scientific. Why? Because they've been sued so many times that they put in systems, which was an education unto itself to see how a large catering organization protects your attendees. Things can't sit out in the sun, things can't sit out on the counter, the food is scrutinized in its preparation and delivery. So that was interesting, and they found out this person that thought they were sick was at a hotel eating breakfast, and that's where they got sick. Wow. So it ended the whole thing, but the science was there. 20 years ago, there would have been no science. So even the catering industry, the institutional catering and other caterers have systems in place, far more sophisticated.
So does the average event organizer or event planner understand this? They can actually go to any caterer and there's a log usually? Is that, I would assume not all of them do it?
Well, this is institutional and specific. Yeah. I don't know that, it depends upon if it's off-premise or on-premise. I think there's more to it than I'm expressing, but institutional on-premise definitely is keeping logs. So when you say, does every event planner know this? No, they don't. unless they've taken a really good course in catering and preparation. And then if you go to the Culinary Institute, you might be all about preparing menus and content and sourcing, and have nothing to do with the law of food and the complexity of what is surrounding the food that gets to your plate.
What are the other liabilities that an event organizer doesn't even realize that they're liable for?
Well, here's my favorite of all times, because I did a big event for Continental, which is now United, at Ellis Island, one of the greatest locations in New York. And someone tripped in a parking lot after they left the event. So where does an event end?
That's a good
what
point.
is the point for where an event ends in liabilities? And this was, they took a ferry across from Ellis Island, got to a parking lot. We had tables there to give out goodie bags and whatever. They then went into a parking lot to get into their car. The parking lot had a hole in it, like a little rut, and the people tripped and fell. Now, to cut to the chase, we had people there who were prepared to assist or help or do an incident report. These people left. They never came back. So when we were sued, the determination was made that they didn't come back to report the incident or ask for help, and that it was a public parking lot. So once they left our table and area, their case was not valid because they did not come back and ask our staff for support, and it was a public parking lot. Or here's my favorite one of all times. You're in a rental chair at an event and someone leans back, the chair cracks, breaks, and slices your leg.
Okay.
So who's responsible? They
Yeah.
sued everybody. They sued the caterer, the venue, the event planner, the rental company, everybody. And, there was no bad medical damage, so the case was kind of dismissed. But the point is, people are litigious. They sue everybody. Now, does every event planner know these things? No, not unless they've taken education or they have a manager who teaches. So this is what I teach in my classes under event management, all these examples I share. So 20 students by 20 students by 20 students, they're going out into the world with a vernacular and understanding of process.
So what are some of the other things that, if you're going to, let's spread the word on this podcast, about things that we should be watching out for? I mean, we've had our own experiences where we announced once that we were going to have an animal at one of our trade shows.
Oh, I remember that one. That was you at a press
That was
release.
me.
Let me tell you, everybody, he announced the penguins.
And PETA was all over us because and then we did a survey to see what people thought, and I was overwhelmingly wrong.
Right.
Because the public was on the side of animal care, and even for spectacle, they did not want to treat animals that way. And
There was a reason we were going to have the penguins there, though. It was a part of a sponsored
Yes, it was a sponsored thing.
destination. But I'll tell you a little more spin in it that David Adler might not be sharing. David Adler is the great promoter. He's Mr. Barnum himself.
I don't know
So
about that.
when
You're
it happened,
Mr.
and I remember I said, don't fight with PETA. Let's just leave it alone and let's move on. I don't need people throwing blood at people at the event. But David said, but this would be a great publicity. We'll get so much publicity out of this. But if you remember the rest of the stories, we had dogs, service dogs, also planned at the event, who are dogs that sniff and go around for bombs and stuff. And they allowed that. They said that dog is purposefully there to assure safety, so they didn't argue that dogs that are working could not be at the event because we had them in a booth. And they had worked during the day. So there's a lot of wrinkles and everything, but I remember all of that. If you do, I don't know.
Yeah, no, we also had some experiences with, we learned the hard way about dealing with people with hearing disabilities. Do you remember some of those rules? Tell us those rules.
I was running the event. I know
Yes.
all that. Well, the thing that you don't understand is how expensive it is, because you have someone who puts on your form that I need support because of, if you want to read a doctrine, you should see the ADA doctrine, which is online, which takes you a year to read. It's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pages, identifying every conceivable disability that could be. So if people list that they need support to come to your, conference or trade show, what could be involved is having to have a interpreter, a signer.
This is from the ADA
Yes,
laws.
required. But there's wrinkles in the laws too. It's not quite totally black and white. It depends on the size and scope of the event. But this particular person needed someone all day for 2 days of the conference, and you had to hire more than one person because the people signing could only work so many hours. So this was going to cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
For one person?
Yes, for one person to do this. And of course, you can have things with sight. There can be the same thing with, visually impaired people or other. There's so many. So it's a fine line. We had to carefully research, show our support of that person at all times in wanting to come and attend our show, and to make sure we documented how we were trying to work things out with them. But they weren't sure they were going to come or not, which was the funny part. And in the end, they did not attend. So when they told us they couldn't come, it kind of ended.
But it's an area of the law and of humanity that we're trying to accommodate as best we can.
Right, but a small conference, it can be overwhelming to have to spend $3,000 to $4,000 not budgeted for a single attendee. And you have to look at the value and the situation and how else you might resolve. And the law allows some gray areas to see what concern and problem-solving information was brought forward. But obviously it's something a skilled planner might encounter, but you certainly, once you encounter it, you become very skilled in that area. But that's all under risk management, ADA, and all that.
Yeah, this risk management thing, people do not take as seriously as they should.
Yeah, and it's growing. It's huge now.
Well,
so many potential problems.
We had an event years ago at the Paramount Studios Theater where we decided to do something on healthcare and terrorism and legal things at events
and recovery
and
heart attacks in an event.
Yeah, and we had 1,000 people signed up for it, and like 50 people showed, which shows that people want to get involved with this, but when push comes to shove, they don't want it. But we were talking about EpiPens. What were some of the other things that we were dealing with at that? We had the police chiefs there talking about how the host is really responsible again.
Yes. It was an amazing event. I was very proud of it because we angled it from every perspective, anyone that could touch any kind, fire, police, assault, medical emergency, using, electrodes.
Defibrillators.
And where are they and how many and does everyone know? So, but it was so disappointing to see that it just wasn't a priority to people to become skilled at and to improve their knowledge of it.
But what's interesting is on YouTube, the videos that we put together that evening have over 30 or 40,000 views, which shows that there is definitely a thirst for it, but they need it when they need it.
So we had created somewhat of a legacy, and how you handle children is different than adults. It's a whole different process. If a child has something stuck in their throat, how you put them across your lap, totally different, which I had to learn because I have grandkids. So there's a lot to know, and a skilled event planner hopefully will try to get familiar with some of this, not wait till it's in their face and they're reactive.
We've been also preaching the fact that if you wear a headset at an event, you better be cross-trained because people look for you for leadership. If you don't know how to use a defibrillator, if you don't know all these other things, then you're missing out on really helping. It's not as glamorous as people think.
No, but let's back up a little, because the initial question, what's changed over the 20, 30, ILEA, the special event Live Association is now 30 years old.
Yeah.
And as a founder of that and a founding president, I remember back when there was nothing, no associations, no books. And I look from then to now, and there's so much information, so many associations, but the technology is a flood. And how much does a person need to know to walk in and have a job? I mean, our staff, when you look at what our team has to know, there's a dozen types of technology that could be overwhelming, but I always talk to my students about that. They have Salesforce and, marketing, Marketo is one. They have project management software. They have online platforms for award shows, apps, which are all platforms, registration, which is a platform, and I could go on. But there's at least a dozen things our staff needs to have knowledge of. None of that existed. So now you also have that technology curve. And how much will not be here? We used robotic bots at our last trade show in Florida. There's another whole technology that had to be serviced along with apps and everything else.
Well, we also, the future of IoT, there's going to be 20 billion connected devices in the next few years. And you're going to even see like connected tablecloths and smart chairs and everything. I mean, the world is shifting before our eyes.
Right. But all these new, young, starting out people, even people that are trying to upgrade to a management position, have to understand all the technology besides the planning and the food and the venues and the decor and the sound and the music and the lights. There's all this stuff that now surrounds us that they have to be able to operate and integrate and make work successfully.
Well, also let's talk a little bit about one of the things I've seen is the morphing of the industry.
Mm-hmm.
That you used to have a meeting and you used to have a conference and you used to have a gala. Now everything is all mixed up and mashed up and it's one big thing. So the skill set of an event organizer is completely across the board and people are stealing ideas from each other.
Right, and board meetings and God knows what else, and board meetings and everything else that can come under that range of types of meetings and what have you, incentives, whatever.
So, what are some of the most memorable events of your career before BizBash? You regale me with all these stories about Michael Dell and people like that. Mm-hmm. What are some of the stories that can be repeated publicly?
Well, you have the what I call the perfects, like gems, the 5-carat perfect diamond that only had 100 people, but it had to be spectacular. So the chairman of GE, who I did several events for year after year, going to 21 and staging a speakeasy, which sounds okay. We've all seen speakeasy events, but this had to be reenacted from arriving outside in antique cars and shootouts and guests being rushed in to not get killed. So the complexity of every element was so specific. Or greeting people at an airport with the people from a chorus line, the actual original cast, the entire cast at an airport greeting a group coming in. 20 people, and here's the entire cast of Chorus Line doing one da. So, and then you go to the scale of the large events, like I did for Novell for 5 or 10 years, which had star shows, and I did 3 nights, 5,000 people each night, and so there were so many moving parts. But there's so many stories, so I don't even know where to begin with my stories. But
what's the one? Give me one. Give us one.
I have the big stories in the back. I have the stories about the boobs that exploded.
Wait, I've never heard this one.
Yeah, this is a Long
I've known you
Island
18 years.
Famous liquor company.
Okay.
Every weekend I went to Long Island and we did clubs with the play Penthouse Pets. And some of them
so
were famous
unpolitically correct.
without going into who they were. Some were famous and known and were dating big stars in Hollywood. And I wake up on Thursday, we pick these people up at noon to go to the Hamptons, and I get the call from the Penthouse Pet of the Year, who's crying to the phone she could not make it because her boob exploded.
Okay.
And this is my number one person that everyone's coming to see, and the whole 7 clubs in the Long Island have been posted with her picture everywhere.
Can you dig into that a little bit more? What does that mean? Her boobs
She had fake boobs and it exploded.
It burst, literally. It wasn't like confetti coming out of the boobs.
No, it was no confetti, it was silicone. But you had to deal with that. You had to call the clubs and say, the others are coming, but she's not. That's one. But I think my all-time favorite was a stripping chimpanzee that was hired for a sales meeting for a major technology company that I ran their sales meetings. And this was one little piece of the whole of what I did, but every piece of entertainment I orchestrated. So someone had heard about this monkey and wanted it because it's a mostly male sales meeting. There were some females. So we have this chimpanzee who's a professional stripper, a monkey, And the monkey shows up with the trainer, and the first thing I hear, the monkey is supposed to go on like 9 o'clock at 6. The monkey has a terrible headache. Can she sleep in your bed until she feels better? Sure, let her go to my bed and sleep.
Who told you that the monkey had a headache?
The guy that handles the monkey.
And how do you know if a monkey has a headache?
Well, he knew. So I had a monkey in my bed.
Monkey on your back.
You got it. So meanwhile, fast forward to 3 hours when she's supposed to go on, and the chairman of this big technologies company and the president is there and the VP of sales, and they're all sitting in. The monkey comes out, and she is perfection. She takes off item by item, one by one item. She takes off her bra and spins it and throws it. Then she takes off her G-string, spins it and throws it, lands right in the CEO's head. So imagine the photo op. Everyone is hysterical. No one could even contain themselves. They'd all been drinking for 3 hours. But you can't make this stuff up. That happened.
You also couldn't do it in the age of social media.
Can you imagine? That man would have been,
He lost his job.
well, he was the CEO, right? But he wanted it, so he got what he wanted. That and plus the U.S. Open stories that I can.
Okay, tell us that.
I can honestly say that I helped a certain tennis star win the U.S. Open, which I would never mention the name because I ran for Avis. They sponsored the men's singles, and I did it for 10 years. Their hospitality suite, which was an indoor tennis court converted into 3 rooms, a VIP space, a VVIP space, and a lounge for the players. And I always had a Belgian dark chocolate, always had bars and bars, which gives you such a boost of energy. And a certain manager of a certain player came into that suite and found me. And this was halfway when they were having a break in the game. And he begged me for Swiss. He said, I know you have it. I know you always have it. He said, please, I'm begging you, give me your Swiss chocolate. He put it in the towel that was being handed to the sweating player who ingested it. So, of course, he got a burst of energy with Swiss chocolate, and he won. But I will never say who that player was. But our event profession, we touch things that no one can imagine. At that same event, I had to get Coca-Cola products into the U.S. Open, which did not allow it, and because it was all Pepsi products. And the chairman of Avis was hosting the chairman of Coca-Cola. So I was told by my client, Richard, I don't care what it takes, you've got to get all Coca-Cola products into the suite, because they had boxes and they were serviced by people with beverage. Well, I had to negotiate, and the price went up and up and up. And I won't say the amount, but let's say it was many figures of zeros. But I got the Coke products into that suite through the person running all the food outlets, and they left with a happy weekend's vacation or a week's vacation.
You never know. You're running the Underground Railroad when you're doing
and
this.
Asked me how my client loved me. My client said, that's why we hired you. You're the only one I know that would have gotten that done.
Okay, so Richard, I have this last couple of questions.
Yeah.
What the hell is with you and confetti? Tell us that you're a memorologist, right? Tell us.
Yeah, well, that's it sort of came when I came to BizBash in a way. But Flutterfetti, which I've done every speech I've ever done, I make a mess of everywhere, and I say this venue now hates me. But it's about the art of celebration, because it was sending a message. Because great events are celebrations, and we create the art and craft of celebration, so they're truly great. So to me, the Flutterfetti says celebration, surprise, delight, and it became symbolic, and we had in our logo for 5 years, if you remember, because we're the celebration industry. That's a part of what we are and who we are and our DNA, and we're creating celebrations always, whether it's a business or other, we're celebrating benchmarks.
And I always introduce you as a memorologist.
Yes.
Tell us about what your theory is behind that.
Well, memorology is the art and science of creating memories at that event, which I think is every event planner's job. Now we talk about aha moments or things of that nature that we've changed the wording. But back then when I started, it was to create memories. And even at a simple award show, when you didn't have the technology, you can hand every attendee a tube of Flutterfetti and line them up as every award recipient for an association went to the stage, and you could create a cascade of. It was so low tech and simple, but it delighted people. I mean, they never forgot it. It created a profound memory. So that's why the Flutterfetti became the easiest way to express surprise and delight.
Which is the hottest thing now.
Yeah, right.
Where everybody wants to create.
Everything old is new again.
Absolutely.
Well,
So Richard, I've known you for many years. I've watched your children grow up. Watched your children have children. I've watched your son become a famous doctor, your daughter becoming one of the premier social media phenomenons in the world. What advice do you give to you if you were to do it all over again as a 21-year-old coming into this industry? What would you have done differently?
What I've done differently?
Yeah.
I don't know, because it's interesting that I think you have to have a sense of the journey in terms of knowing when things are meant to be intuitively. You can plan and direct, and I think you should have somewhat of a plan. I mean, I had a plan to come to Broadway and to get my master's and come here, and then I had a plan to do whatever. But I think sometimes you have to know when the synchronicity occurs around you, having sensitivity and sensibility about what could be on the fringe and move towards it and then make it happen. But I think you have to really read things around you and be highly sensitive. And you came to my office 18 years ago and said, I want you to be the president of BizBash. And I could have said, excuse me, who are you?
The hell am I?
But the little antenna went up and I said, I wonder who this guy is, and maybe it's my next moment. Because we are all going to have 6 careers or more now. The millennials and the Generation Z will probably have 200 careers. But I think we are going to have and keep evolving and improving and changing our lives, which I feel I have done, and I'm very blessed to have done that. So I think you've got to be aware of what's coming at you and move towards it when it's right. So keep your senses alert, research the horizon for your next moment and keep growing.
And with your students, you're talking to young people all the time. Are you optimistic?
I am. I think they're knowledgeable, they're skilled, they're motivated, they're different, their behavior is different. They're surrounded by social media and technology. They want things more immediately, but they're skilled and lovely. I have about 20 students each semester. I teach one class, and they're smart and they get it. The good students get it. There's always the good, the median, and the ones that we need to really work harder with to get them up to the level because they're a little bit unmotivated, shall we say. But the good students are so good and so dedicated and want so badly to create events and be a part of them.
What are the characteristics of the good ones? I mean, what do you, like in hiring too, it's the same thing.
Well, they do the work. Number one, they read carefully, which is my number one thing, to read my assignments, read my, all of the things they have to do. I write grade sheets for every single lesson. They read it, they ask questions, which I have no problem with. The bad ones, I never hear from. They don't read it right, they don't follow instructions right, but the good ones take it to heart, and when they do their final project, which is create an entire event, all the production, design, and decor, they take it so seriously, and they ask questions, and I get emails, and they visit with me. So there is a whole generation that does care, is hopeful, and coming equipped to the production companies, knowing what event production is. They took my class, they had a good exposure to light, sound, staging, you name it, everything you think of. Rigging, there's a chapter on rigging, a chapter on fences in these books. So who the hell teaches fencing, and staging? I do. So my students have to figure out the floor plans so they are more equipped at least to step in and be helpful than just wait to absorb like a sponge.
Well, one thing about this industry, unlike other industries, is that it doesn't scale that well. Someone has to be at the event. We heard at one event where somebody didn't check the foxholes and the caterer didn't show up on time.
Right. Remember, that was the one where they were looking from one hill to the other. There was a truck on the other mountain halfway across L.A. I remember that story.
Yeah.
One of our,
so training people for this next generation is a real fantastic thing to be doing. I think
can never be too specific.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great industry. We're so lucky and proud to have created a profession, which is what my goal has been since I started with ILEA and NPI and chairman of 4 foundations in the green meeting industry and other. It's been to enhance the professionalism. That is what my whole career has been.
Also, I think we've both learned that you get more than when you give, you get much more. Like the idea of being part of this incredible community of people. And it has been so satisfying for both of us, I think,
it has
to be contributing to this community. And what I get back is so much more than I could ever give.
Well, I know I'm proud to have been a part of BizBash and to work with you to create a source and place for the industry to gather knowledge and inspiration ideas. And I think everywhere we go, I love BizBash. We both hear it.
Well, that is a great place to end. But if someone wants to reach you, what's your email address, or how can people reach you?
Well, I'm still at BizBash.
You're still here, yes.
So it's raaron@bizbash.com for a while. I don't know how much longer, but for this year. And that's where they can reach me. NYU, I think here is the place I'm not going to give up my Gmail.
No.
So it's RAARON at bizbash.com.
Great.
And I hope we've added some inspiration that it's what you make it. The journey is what you make it. So shape it and make it.
Okay, let's end. You put a quote on your phone a lot when you have your answering machine for years. What is your quote to end this?
I guess my quote would be, an ounce of inspiration create a river of dreams. So if we can inspire our clients, inspire our events, inspire our staff and colleagues, we can create a river, a complete flow of a dream that can come true if we all work to communicate, to inspire and direct what we are in charge of, these events, to the highest potential that they can have.
Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, David Adler.
David, thanks for sharing that with us. You've had a lot of adventures with Richard and a lot of stories to tell. So looking back, what do you think is the biggest thing that's changed in the event industry from when you started BizBash?
I think that what we try to do is allow people to peek over the fence to see what other people are doing. And that is kind of what we think was our difference. That when people saw it on BizBash, they were able to sort of raise the bar. And I think that Richard and I both believe in that principle of what our company was all about. And we're now at a point 10 years after the iPhone started that experiential and personalized media and personalized events have really become incredible in terms of what people expect when they go to an event.
Right. The concept has been proven, and 18 years later, here we are.
Here we are. So Beth, what's going on at BizBash?
Well, I wanted to let our listeners know to keep an eye on their inboxes for our winter issue. This one focuses on event tech, and it's full of great ideas for what's here and what's to come to help move your events into the future. So check that out. And if you don't subscribe, you can find that at bizbash.com/magazine.
And you're also going to see in February our BizBash Best product that's actually coming out, a print magazine.
Right. It's our annual venue guide, and more on that to come.
Yes. And also, I wanted to bring up the fact that if people are interested in sponsoring this podcast, to give us a call. They can actually email me at dadler@bizbash.com. We're finding that podcasts are where I learn more than anything. I listen to podcasts all day long. I even listen to it in the shower sometimes. Don't ask me how I got one of those speakers that's waterproof. And it's incredible. And I actually try to walk to work. And when I walk to work, I listen to them. And sometimes I take the long route.
Right. It's the equivalent of listening to it in your garage. Us New Yorkers,
Exactly.
we'll listen to them on our commute or take the long way home.
Exactly. So anyway, with that, let's say goodbye. And till further notice, gather on.
Gather on.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. If you like what you're hearing, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or your favorite podcast app. We can be found on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Player FM, Google Play, and Pocket Cast. Be sure to leave us a rating and review. It helps others discover the GatherGeeks podcast. We'd also love to hear from you. You can leave feedback on Twitter at GatherGeeks or leave us an email, gathergeeks@bizbash.com. We hope you'll join us again for the next episode of GatherGeeks. Until then, gather on. Invest in yourself and your staff with self-paced online event education designed to fit into your busy schedule. Subscribe to the Event Leadership Institute for only $25 per month and gain access to an extensive on-demand video library of classes, as well as interviews with industry leaders. Best of all, you can watch classes in small pieces or all at once. For more information, visit eventleadershipinstitute.com.